My strategy was questioning the author, and questioning the author is a comprehension tool that teachers can use when they work on reading comprehension. In questioning the author, your instructional focus will be on oral language, comprehension, and this can be used across content areas. So it's not just for reading. This is for social studies, science. In reading, you can focus on using it with narrative and expository texts. It's really, really broadly used. For grade levels, it can be used for all of them, but the best time to teach students this strategy is when they are in grades 3 through 8. Kindergarten through second grade, there are some pieces of the Common Core standards that are a part of your curriculum, but third through eighth grade will do better on being able to understand and really internalize this process, this comprehension tool. And I've attached standards for grades 4 through 8 below, so you'll be able to see later where this all ties in. The questioning the author strategy was developed by Isabel Beck and Margaret McCowan, and both of them have spent extensive time researching this method and its implementation in the classroom, teacher success with it, and what teachers need to do to make it flow easily. The big thing with questioning the author is the word fallibility. And the Collins English Dictionary defines fallible as capable of being mistaken or erring. And it's important for students to learn that authors are capable of being fallible. They can make mistakes. And yes, they can give us information to understand their message, but the message is not always clear. And a lot of the times the students feel that it's their fault. They can't understand what the text is saying because there's something wrong with them. But there are times when the author is mistaken, or they've made a mistake. They've not made it as clear as they need to. And teaching students that texts are fallible really help give them confidence, and they begin to start to question what they read and question what the author has written, how they have phrased text. And when students have difficulty understanding text, the best way for them to understand text is to use the questioning the author strategy. Again, it's a comprehension tool, and it's designed to teach students to ask questions and talk with classmates as they grapple with the complex ideas and texts they're reading. So this is a strategy that is focused on teacher-student and student-to-student discussion. Now, using the questioning the author strategy involves using queries, not questions. And queries are open-ended questions that are designed to make students think, not just recall information. Students are taught to use queries when they discuss parts of complex text with their peers. And again, this is going back to student discussion. Queries can be used for specific sentence, paragraph, chapter, or longer written pieces. When you first start out, teachers are the ones to select the text that will be read by the students. because ultimately the teacher will need to frame how to use questioning the author, and then from there students will see how it works. And I'll go over that in more detail later on. Queries are used to support students as they develop comprehension. Queries will bring about more complex answers, and with bringing about more complex answers, queries really develop a student's higher level thinking skills. And queries are process oriented, unlike questions, which are more product oriented. So when they say product oriented, there's a specific result, whereas with queries, you're not going to have specific things. Some example queries. What is the author trying to tell us here? What is the author talking about here? How does this fit with what the author told us before? Why is the author telling us this? Why do you think the author tells us that now? That's what the author has said, but what does the author mean, and what questions remain unanswered? So remember, these are open-ended questions. There is not a set answer. In terms of teacher preparation, you're going to have to take a lot of time in the beginning to prepare the material. This is a very tedious, I would say, process, so much so that you want to make sure that you are setting this up correctly so that students will understand and be able to use this strategy in the future. You do need to predetermine the text that you will use, and you also need to model the queries within your chosen text. This requires a lot of out loud thinking and modeling. The students need to see how you process a specific selection of text and how that thinking leads to the answer from the query you have developed. When a teacher begins to plan for questioning the author, you must also expect to be flexible, because students are not going to get this right away. You need to try and anticipate what you think their reactions will be, because they will have difficulty answering the questions, and a lot of times you might get very shallow answers because students are still in the mindset that they're thinking, hey, there's a specific answer. They're not going deep. They're not looking beyond the surface. Again, you're heavily involved when you're first introducing the questioning the author strategy, but over time, involvement decreases because students will begin to create and answer queries on their own, which is great. So, like I said earlier, you've got teacher to student discussion, which eventually leads to student discussion. Your students will eventually begin embodying this strategy and being able to use it with much more ease. There are two things that you are going to want to avoid when you first start out, and that is collecting students' comments. So for example, it says, all right, who else has input? Or I always think of, I'll ask students, we have a cursive quote that we do each morning, and I ask them, what do you think it means? And after I'm done listening to one student, I will say, all right, who else, what else do you think? And that's not good because I'm just collecting their comments. What you need to do is not collect those comments, because the focus for your discussion on the certain text, or as in my case, the certain quote, leads the students to have possibly different answers, and they're all scattered, and you don't want it scattered because then it's kind of hard to bring it back into focus. And the other thing you don't want to do is take over the discussion when student answers do not seem up to par. And again, they're going to be very shallow responses at first, but you really have to give it time. According to the research done by Beck and McCowan, when teachers started using questioning the author, they had to kind of break their conventional way of asking students questions where you're just retrieving answers. And instead they had to start using the open-ended queries. And they found a lot of times that they needed to have follow-up questions because there was difficulty sustaining discussion. Students were having a hard time. So know that it is going to take time, but your students will get it. You just have to keep modeling and thinking aloud and selecting text that they can identify with and they can build on. You want to make them feel like right now that there is no correct answer. When you do lead the discussion, there are 6 moves you need to follow. Marking is one of them. The teacher needs to draw attention to a particular idea that students have expressed. Turning back, teachers need to give back the responsibility to students for exploring the text. Revoicing, you need to interpret and rephrase students' ideas that they're struggling to express. Recapping, summarize the big ideas in order to move ahead in the text. Modeling, again, sharing your thinking as you talk about a particular point that maybe the students have missed. And then annotating. So there may be times when you provide information during a discussion to the students. And again, it kind of goes back to modeling too. They might have missed something, or you might just have to add something. You also need to let the students do more talking. You're going to use prompts to help them think more deeply, but ultimately you should not be doing the most talking. You might at the beginning, but that's just at the beginning. How to use this instructional strategy? You're going to want to analyze the text and locate the big ideas. Develop questions, and you can put those questions in books at the places where you want to stop and have the student dissect the information, dissect the text. Just jot it down on a post-it note, stick it in there. That works. Third, you're going to read the text and stop at a section that you've deemed that you will be talking about. Then you'll ask queries. Use them to begin your discussion. Continue reading and asking queries. Really get the students thinking and discuss the text. So you will use what they've said to lead the discussion. And again, eventually your leadership in using queries for questioning the author, your involvement will decrease. But in the meantime, you'll invite the students to make connections and compare the text to others. Last but not least, you're going to want to use this at the beginning of the year, which in all reality is the best time, because this is such a complex thing that you're going to need to have given them time to really absorb what it is that you're trying to teach them. So this way it will help them better comprehend text, and you'll instill more confidence in them. And lastly, you can use it with the whole class, small groups, or with individual students. And the following are just